Hey there, welcome back. Great to see you again for Law number 14, Mirror Their World, Match Energy, Pace, and Language to Build Instant Rapport. If you haven't watched the previous episodes yet, please check the description. Otherwise, you will miss some important steps in this book. People trust what feels familiar. Reflection is the art of influence. From the moment we are born, we search for recognition, not just in words, but in gestures, emotions, and unspoken signals that tell us we are understood. This is the essence of mirroring, the ability to reflect back another person's world so perfectly that they feel seen, validated, and safe. Human beings do not simply crave love or respect, they crave familiarity. What looks like attraction, loyalty, or trust is, at its root, a reflection of the self. We fall for those who echo back our energy, our values, or our hidden desires, because in their presence we feel more complete. On the surface, mirroring might look like copying someone's tone of voice or posture, but at its core, it is much deeper. It is emotional resonance. People are naturally drawn to what they recognize, even if they don't consciously know why. A smile invites a smile. Calmness diffuses anger. Respect breeds respect. This is not coincidence, it is biology. Our brains are wired with mirror neurons, circuits designed to imitate the emotions and actions of others, allowing us to empathize, bond, and build tribes. It is this invisible mechanism that explains why you feel closer to someone who laughs at your jokes or finishes your sentences, and why strangers can quickly become allies when their values sound like yours. But mirroring is not limited to communication. It extends to attraction. The reason certain body shapes or facial symmetries draw the eye is not vanity, but survival. Evolution whispers through proportions and movements, signaling health, vitality, and fertility. A man notices the curve of the waist-to-hip ratio not because society has conditioned him to, but because millennia of biology taught him that this shape signals life. A woman feels pulled to broad shoulders not simply because of aesthetics, but because strength has always mirrored protection. Beyond the physical, aura and energy matter even more. When two people share a vibration, when one person's presence reflects back the other's inner state, the attraction is magnetic, almost fated. This is why we sometimes feel more ourselves around one person than anyone else. Mirroring is also the silent foundation of loyalty. Friendships that last a lifetime are rarely transactional. They are born when two people recognize in each other a reflection of values, loyalty, sacrifice, humor, or resilience. That is why we call a true friend a brother from another mother. The bond comes not from blood, but from mirrored spirit. And in love, when someone feels like home, it is not because they are perfect, but because their world reflects the one we secretly long to live in. This law is both dangerous and powerful. Dangerous because when wielded without awareness, we can be manipulated by those who mirror us only to exploit us. Powerful because when mastered, mirroring becomes the most subtle yet decisive form of influence. Whether in business, leadership, relationships, or personal growth, those who can reflect another's world gain entry into their trust, their loyalty, and even their desire. To understand mirroring is to understand why humans are drawn to each other, why some connections last while others fracture, and why those who perfect this art often rise to power while others remain on the outside, unheard. Power has always favored those who learned the art of reflection. To rule over men, to guide them, even to disarm them, the first step was never to impose, but to mirror. The most successful leaders, generals, and visionaries understood that the quickest way into another's heart and mind was not through domination, but through reflection. Because reflection makes another feel recognized, understood, and safe. Julius Caesar, though an aristocrat, ate beside his soldiers, marched through mud, and carried the same burdens they carried. In mirroring their suffering, he won their undying loyalty. To them, Caesar was not merely a commander, but a comrade. The reflection was intentional. By appearing like them, he commanded their devotion without ever demanding it. Centuries later, Mahatma Gandhi dressed in the simplest cotton dhoti, mirroring the attire of India's poor. In doing so, he transformed himself from a barrister of the English courts into a symbol of the masses. He became the mirror of their pain and hope, and they followed him not because he asked, but because he embodied their silent cry. The lesson is stark. Those who mirror rise. Those who refuse fall. History's most tragic rulers are those who insulated themselves from the world they governed. Marie Antoinette's detached image, silks, jewels, and whispers of "let them eat cake" was the very opposite of mirroring. She and her court reflected only themselves, their luxury, and their indifference. The people, unable to find their lives mirrored in her, turned to revolution. Napoleon himself later observed that a leader is a dealer in hope. Hope is not manufactured from above. It is drawn by reflecting what people yearn to see in themselves. Without that reflection, trust shatters, and distance breeds rebellion. Military strategy, too, is built on reflection. Sun Tzu wrote that the wise general shapes himself to the enemy's form, appearing to be what the other expects, only to shift once the moment is right. The art of camouflage is not merely to hide, but to mirror the environment so perfectly that the opponent cannot distinguish between what is real and what is not. The clever commander mirrors weakness when strength would be threatening, mirrors calm when rage would trigger suspicion, mirrors confusion to draw the enemy into overconfidence. In every move, reflection is a weapon, soft in appearance, but razor-sharp in effect. Philosophers of East and West also saw mirroring as the heart of influence. Confucius taught harmony through adapting one's conduct to the rituals and expectations of others, for reflection maintained balance in society. Taoist wisdom speaks of water, which mirrors the vessel it fills, becoming whatever surrounds it while retaining its own essence. It does not resist the shape but uses it, flowing silently into power. In this way, mirroring is not weakness but a higher strategy, to be seen as part of others while quietly remaining yourself. The failure to mirror is often the failure to connect. Humans instinctively recoil from what they cannot recognize in themselves. Foreign words, gestures, or arrogance feel alien, and the door to influence closes. The genius of mirroring is that it disarms the natural suspicion we carry toward outsiders. When someone reflects our tone, our values, even our emotional rhythm, we no longer see them as a stranger, but as a trusted extension of ourselves. And once that trust is established, influence flows as naturally as breath. In every era, in every context, be it empire, business, or relationships, the principle endures. Those who reflect are embraced. Those who refuse are resisted. To mirror is not to lose yourself, but to hide your edge until the moment you choose to reveal it. The mirror is the silent bridge between separation and power. Human beings are wired to seek recognition of themselves in others. This is not vanity, but survival. Long before civilization, tribes depended on the subtle signs of acceptance, how someone looked back at them, echoed their gestures, or matched their tone. To be reflected meant to belong, and belonging meant survival. Modern neuroscience confirms this through the discovery of what psychologists call mirror neurons, cells in the brain that fire both when we act and when we observe someone else performing the same action. It means that when a person crosses their arms, sighs with frustration, or smiles with warmth, we instinctively feel a shadow of that state ourselves. This is why the person who can skillfully reflect the emotional state of others is often trusted more deeply than the one who argues most convincingly. We are not persuaded by logic first, we are persuaded by familiarity. This is why the calm leader who breathes slowly during a crisis slows the entire room. It is why an angry mob grows more violent when one person escalates. Emotion spreads like fire, but it also calms like water. Psychologists call this emotional contagion, and it explains why groups can spiral into chaos or rise into unity depending on the emotional tone that dominates. To attune to the person in front of you is to gain access to the invisible levers of their mind. The negotiator who leans forward when his counterpart leans forward, or softens his voice when the other speaks quietly, is not merely mimicking, he is building an invisible bridge. That bridge makes the other person feel safe, and safety opens the gates of persuasion. But reflection is more than copying behavior. It is about aligning with someone's inner world. People do not remember every word of a conversation, but they remember how they felt in your presence. If they felt heard, seen, and valued, you become unforgettable. Consider how in relationships, romantic or platonic, people often speak of finding someone who just gets them. This sense of being understood does not come from constant agreement, but from attunement, picking up on the subtle rhythm of another's mood, energy, and unspoken needs. A lover who notices when silence is a request for comfort rather than space, or a friend who senses when a joke is masking pain, earns loyalty that no material reward can buy. The power in this lies not only in influence but in prediction. When you are skilled at aligning with others, you begin to sense their next move before they make it. You can feel tension rising in a negotiation before words are spoken, or anticipate when a friend is about to withdraw before they even realize it themselves. This predictive ability is not mystical, it is psychology. By paying close attention to the patterns of behavior, tone, and micro-expressions, you build a mental map of another person's emotional script. Over time, you can forecast outcomes with uncanny accuracy, which places you in the rare position of shaping events rather than reacting to them. Yet there is danger in overuse. Too much reflection risks appearing false, even manipulative. When people sense they are being imitated mechanically, they recoil. Authenticity is the shield against this backlash. The key is not to mirror every gesture, but to choose moments of alignment that feel natural, restrained, and purposeful. True mastery comes when the other person is unaware that you are adjusting to them, when it feels instead that you are simply moving together in rhythm. That is when influence becomes effortless and trust becomes the currency you command. History and real life are filled with examples where the ability to reflect and attune determined not only relationships but the course of nations. Consider Julius Caesar, who despite being a formidable general, had the genius of making every soldier feel as though they mattered personally. He would walk among his men, address them by name, share their food, and listen to their grievances. By aligning himself with their emotions, he became not just a commander, but a father figure, and soldiers were willing to die for him. His rivals underestimated this psychological bond, mistaking it for mere charisma, when in truth it was a deliberate strategy of emotional alignment. On the opposite end, we see Napoleon in his later years, when hubris led him to dismiss the emotions and concerns of allies. His inability to reflect and resonate with the subtle fears of his generals and the exhausted will of his army in Russia led to catastrophic losses. History teaches us that to ignore the emotional climate of others is to blind yourself, even if you are otherwise brilliant. In modern business, this law is equally visible. A leader who treats employees as machines may achieve short bursts of efficiency, but loses the loyalty that makes a company endure. Contrast that with a leader who senses the invisible script of their team, the need for recognition, belonging, and growth. By reflecting those values back through acknowledgement, encouragement, and trust, they create cultures where people work beyond obligation, driven by loyalty and shared vision. In fact, studies on employee engagement show that people are more likely to stay in a company where they feel understood and valued, even if offered more money elsewhere. The same holds true in negotiation. The skilled negotiator doesn't hammer facts endlessly. They tune into the mood across the table. If the counterpart is anxious, the negotiator lowers tension by slowing the pace, asking calm questions, and signaling patience. If the counterpart seeks respect, the negotiator makes them feel acknowledged before addressing numbers. It is not the loudest or most forceful person who wins deals, but the one who aligns with what the other side feels and then subtly guides them toward agreement. Even in personal life, the depth of this law is profound. Lovers often claim they just clicked, but beneath that sentiment lies attunement. One person's energy rhythm aligns with another's, creating a sense of safety and attraction that transcends appearance or status. This explains why someone may choose one partner for life, not because they are the most attractive by conventional standards, but because they feel uniquely seen. In friendship too, when someone says, "I've got your back," it is not words alone, but years of silent alignment, listening, showing up, and sharing emotional states that prove the bond. These connections endure storms that weaker, more transactional bonds cannot survive. Reflection can also be used strategically to unsettle others. Skilled leaders, politicians, and even con artists sometimes use silence or subtle mismatching to provoke discomfort. By breaking alignment at critical moments, refusing to nod, withholding acknowledgement, they make others chase approval. This form of psychological warfare shifts the power dynamic. The less you give in resonance, the more others struggle to regain it, often revealing their deeper motives in the process. What becomes clear across history, business, and relationships is that this law is not optional. It governs influence whether you are conscious of it or not. Those who master it inspire devotion, predict behavior, and gain control without force. Those who ignore it stumble blindly, disconnected from the currents of human emotion that ultimately decide victory or failure. Mastering the art of emotional attunement is not about mimicry, nor is it about losing yourself in others. It is about learning to read the subtle notes that shape human behavior and deciding, with clarity, how to respond. Those who train themselves in this discipline become almost prophetic. They can anticipate reactions, sense shifts in mood before they erupt, and guide conversations with invisible precision. Those who ignore it stumble blindly, disconnected from the currents of human emotion that ultimately decide victory or failure. This foresight is not mystical. It is the result of constant awareness and disciplined restraint. If there is one truth to take from this law, it is that people rarely remember what you said, but they always remember how you made them feel. The leader who makes others feel valued, the negotiator who makes others feel safe, the partner who makes the other feel seen, these are the ones who are trusted, followed, and loved. But the opposite is equally true. Those who fail to attune leave behind confusion, resentment, or emptiness. And once trust erodes, it is almost impossible to recover. The discipline lies in practice. In your next conversation, observe more than you speak. Notice the tone, the pauses, the body language, the small changes in expression. Instead of rushing to respond, allow space. Sometimes silence speaks more than words. Train yourself to mirror, not superficially, but with intention. And when necessary, break alignment subtly to reclaim control. Over time, this becomes second nature, and you find yourself predicting not just what people will say, but what they will do. This law, like all true laws of power and human nature, carries dual edges. Used with care, it builds bonds stronger than steel, fosters trust, and unites people under shared purpose. Used ruthlessly, it manipulates and ensnares, bending others to your will while leaving them convinced the choice was theirs. Power rests not in volume, but in resonance, and the one who resonates most deeply writes the invisible script of interaction. Carry this maxim forward. To master human connection is not to speak louder, but to listen deeper. He who learns to reflect and redirect the emotions of others gains influence that outlasts words, wealth, or even force. All right, that's a wrap for part 15. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate your time and energy. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and keeps the content coming your way. And be sure to check out part 15, where we dive into Use Curiosity as a Hook. Until then, take care and keep growing. See you in the next one.